As in all things, let us begin with prayer. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God of abundance, you have shed upon this community, Trinity Cathedral, resources of many, many kinds. We lift our hearts and our minds and our souls up to you, O Lord, as we envision our future, as we gather together in the work of the gospel. We ask your blessing upon us and all those who have labored and will come after us. All this we ask through our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. And I would like to invite Norm, and then Aaron will give a little bit of a timeline.
All right. Can you hear me now? That close? Whoa. Well, I hope everybody knows I'm Norm, the senior warden here, and I am the dream person for today. And I may be the dream person because my head is always kind of in the clouds. I don't know about you, but I have dreams to upgrade to a bigger house. All on one level because I'm old. However, I've been dreaming that same dream for 40 years and I'm still in the same house. I dream that I'm going to win the Mega Millions and I'm going to finance the entire project. And I'm almost there. I won $4 this week. Sure. I dream of a Trinity Cathedral bursting with people every single Sunday, singing, praying, supporting each other with programming that meets the needs of everyone that shows up. I dream too of the Cathedral Commons in all its glory, that it becomes a reality. I'm sure you're dreaming that too. But to put things into perspective, I want to talk about dreams a little bit, and I have a fun little quiz we're going to do. I'm going to give you a quote from somebody that has to do with a dream and see if anybody recognizes who it's from. The first quote, you got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to make a dream come true? Who knows? Anybody? That's from South Pacific, Oscar Hammerstein. It's good to dream. It sets the imagination afire. It allows us to go beyond today and peer into the shadows of tomorrow's possibilities until reality flips on the light and shows us the path ahead has a lot of bends and twists. That's me. I had to throw one in there nobody could guess. Without leaps of imagination or dreaming, we lose the excitement of possibilities. Dreaming, after all, is a form of planning. Gloria Steinem. A dream doesn't become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. You may have heard that one fairly recently. Colin Powell. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Walt Disney. Dreams can become a reality when we possess a vision that is characterized by the willingness to work hard, a desire for excellence, and a belief in our right and our responsibility to be equal members of society. This one surprised me. Janet Jackson. So many of our dreams at first seem impossible. Then they seem improbable. And then, when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable. Christopher Reeve. Last one. When you have a dream that you can't let go of, trust your instincts and pursue it. But remember, real dreams take work, they take patience, And sometimes they require you to dig down very deep. Be sure you're willing to do that. Harvey Mackay. My point in all of this is that dreaming is wonderful, but it's only part of what makes a reality. Hard work and determination are the key, but sometimes so does realizing a dream might have to be modified, and God only knows how many times we've modified Cathedral Commons. It has been a dream since 2016, a grand dream that totally reimagines our space. Called Cathedral Commons, it truly fired up the imagination and the hopes of our parish. It has also frustrated all of us because that dream has been so elusive. Just recently, I found the brochures passed out at the beginning of the campaign, and I was impressed. There was this nifty little book. There was a letter from Craig Loya, a brochure, and there was another one from Father Stephen. And the things that I found in these pamphlets is that the mission of everything we're doing with Cathedral Commons as a parish really hasn't changed. Cathedrals have historically served as crossroads of social, religious, and artistic life. They have provided a space for prayer, the expression of spirituality, and the chance to connect deeply with one another, even across our differences. That hasn't changed. When this started, if you remember, there was a 2 million success goal that was designed to refresh and significantly upgrade key spaces and systems. Achieving this goal will give us a building that reflects the vibrancy and vitality of our congregation and of which we can be proud. The 3 million, if our community is able to raise 3 million, this enables us to fully realize our dreams. At this level, we completely change our floor plans as we have laid out in the following pages, address all of the major concerns with our current building, and make our programming a reality. That dream was never realistic. And the numbers, when they started digging, found out were much higher than $3 million to do everything we wanted. There was one time I remember it came in at $6 million. And Father Stephen tried to whittle it down to $3.5 million. And still we weren't able to do that. And you'll hear more facts about that in a minute. The parish house has served us well, and we've outgrown what it's able to do for us. We have discovered that there are more bumps along the road than we expected. Your vestry has had contractors and architects working hard on what we want, and they in turn have told us what must be done. Frankly, our dream, again, has to be reimagined. Needed projects have surfaced as we delved into the structure of our building, which they didn't do very well in the first go-around. Our findings, in particular, has loomed for many years, and there is one that has not had a solution, and we have not been able to address in the original plans. It's the sewer and flooding in the lower level. I don't know how many of you are aware, but every time we get a substantial rain, water comes up out of the sewer. It's not just that big flood we had, it's every time it rains hard. And that is not acceptable for any project. To fix that, we've had people working hard, and it means removing the stage in the Gardner Hall, digging into our foundation and going beyond our foundation into the street, where the city has to cooperate with us in that same action. Nobody knew that I was going to take that. We also thought years ago that the asbestos inside of the parish hall had been removed. Not so. The asbestos on the floors had been removed, but the asbestos in the ceilings is still there. And that too has to go. We can't move forward with anything as long as asbestos is in those ceilings. I'm not asking you to abandon the dream. What I'm asking you to reimagine this dream and know that your clergy and vestry are as disappointed as you must be. We have to do this in stages. We have to address the mechanical needs of the building first, and then we can reimagine the upgrades we are all hoping will happen. Dean Vanessa is going to talk to us now about the realities and a few numbers. Don't throw tomatoes.
Oh, we do have cookies. That's excellent. I'm going to ask Erin to give us a little bit of a timeline. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
So a little bit of a timeline in my book was 7 years. So when I told my husband how much I'd done in the timeline, his face told me I need to probably summarize it a little bit more than my 9 pages. So I will give you a briefer summary. For those of you who've been in the project since the beginning, Vern, solidarity for this. We started this project in 2016. The chapter began to note areas in which the building was not serving our parish. We were growing, and the building was starting to fail. Fast forward into 2017, where a building task force convened to start to look at how could the building be used better? What are areas where the building was failing? Windows were falling out where the children were playing, obviously needed to be addressed. That's kind of where our conversation began to grow. Towards the end of 2017, selected our initial architect, Ali Pointer Macchietto. We started to get quotes, looked at a study of the building to see how could the building be used and how could we use the building towards our current strategic plan. For those of you who have been with us for a while, that was the Casting into Deep Waters plan for 2020. So the initial plan was based around that and a task force building. In 2018, began to expand the scope, and we started to talk prices. Our initial architects, their first quote to us was $3 to $5 million just to renovate. They also said you could just demo the building, and that would be $15 million. Obviously, at that point, the chapter said that's not within our budget, and we began to look at renovating. But we have had higher numbers than what Dean Vanessa is going to share with us in a little bit. We decided to refine the vision, had some small focus groups in late 2018 where people really got a chance to voice what do they want changed in the building, what do they want to see for the building. That was the entrance to the building, accessibility. That was the initial plan when we talked about having a banquet hall. With that, we were getting a quote of about $4 million with an additional $1 million just for what was always termed soft furnishing and soft costs. So looking at about $5 million in 2018. We decided in late 2018 that we were going to go ahead and go forward with this project. But at that point, we needed to do a feasibility study. That was where we would assess, really how much could we honestly raise towards this project that's looking at $3 to $5 million. We decided to hire Steyer Group, which quite a few people in this room were either involved in or met with, and the feasibility study found after 5 weeks, we could roughly raise $1.5 to $2.5 million. So we decided to go forward with the campaign, and that was 10 weeks, November to March 2018 into 2019. We did really well. The campaign by the end of March was at just under $2 million pledged towards the project, which was fantastic. We were really showing good progress towards the goals that Steyer gave us. By the summer of 2019, we had raised over $2 million pledged, and we're starting to look at contractors. We looked at bids, costs, and hiring a cost consultant, decided to hire a construction manager at risk, but we knew at that point we couldn't do anything until 2020. Notice the year that's coming. So the chapter decided to spend those last couple months in 19 talking about what we wanted the plan to be. At that point, we brought on AO Architects, who were estimating the project low number would be $2.5 million. We also brought in Boyd Jones on board, who's currently still with us, and talked about an 8-month project. Then came March of 2020, when everything upended. As chapters started to meet about what are we gonna do? Everything is unpredictable. The construction manager and our finance committee got together, as well as the architects, and agreed it was probably best at that point to pause. Weren't sure what was going to happen, but pause before we moved to the next phase. We were really lucky with the people we were working with because they allowed us to pause at no cost to us. There was no penalty, nothing happened to us by choosing to pause in that moment. Spring and summer of 2020, we continued to work with AO, but things were evolving very quickly. We worked on a set of plans to build, and Boyd Jones gave us an initial estimate, $3.1 million or higher. And at that point, we were faced with the reality of we hadn't raised enough to meet the cost that was being projected to us. So chapter met, the finance committee and the building task force started to look at cuts. What could we shift in the program to try to bring that number down? And we worked with Steyer on how to follow up, how to re-ask. Summarizing quickly. We were able to raise an additional $165,000 that fall, and we had realistic discussions. This is what it's going to cost. This is what the plans are. This is what we want as a parish, but this is what we have as money. We decided to work with the architects to re-envision plans, and we also brought in the Episcopal Church Building Fund, who work with churches throughout the nation to give some advice and also begin to look at additional resources. What outside of ourselves could we find? We continue to work with them into 2021, discerning direction and watching how the parish and our building use had changed in the last year. In 2021, the chapter had a really heavy conversation about should we move forward or should we realistically hold off? At this point, we were in the middle of a search for a new dean. We had money sitting, we had architects. It was a really heavy decision to decide what we were going to do. And then came fall of 2021, in which I wrote the words, "the flood." That is when one of our most glaring issues came to light, the water mitigation issue that just stalled everything. Luckily, Dean Vanessa came and visited us when the building smelled and the building was flooded and the walls were torn apart, and she still chose to come to us. But it raised the discussion. It raised the discussion on really maintenance issues that had long been left to fester. In November 2021, when Dean Vanessa came on, we started to look at the project again. That meant talking about the drainage issues and the critical needs that we really needed to address in the project. That was the entrance, access, and modernizing the building. We began in spring of 2022 to rework the plan, meeting with AO again, and we reviewed reviving our contract with them and going forward. In 2022, we discussed changes. There were tours held. I know some people who are here got to go on a tour or got to ask questions. There was time for feedback, and we talked about recommitting to the project, but knowing that we had to have a new vision of ministry. The project was going to pivot again. In fall of 22 into the winter, we hired a TIGO group to help us as owners' reps, began to clarify contracts, and Boyd Jones and AO were both on board to work on the project. We began to discuss plans, we began to discuss contracts, and with contracts comes costs. Winter of 2023, AO began to bring engineers into our building, which is great, but that also means we start to learn where else our building is failing us. They helped to determine critical needs, and as chapter just began to discuss, we also had to wait as final project numbers began to come in, which brings us to now. We've received numbers from Boyd Jones, and the chapter has motioned to continue negotiate our project with our senior warden and our dean having approval to keep negotiating and seeing what really fits within our scope. And that brings us to now, because we're in 2023.
2023, I've got mine. Thank you very much. Just a quick pause, because I see a lot of faces in here who have put literally some blood, lots and lots of sweat, and certainly a few tears into building this project between 2016 and now. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I do want to acknowledge, and for those who are on YouTube, there have been so many dedicated folks from Trinity. I just am humbled and thankful for all the dedication and for the dream and for the visioning and for the courage to go forward and continue to stick with the project as it evolved, as all things did. So I'm going to ask us to clap our hands in congratulations of our courage and our visioning for all of you and for all of us. So quickly, one of the things that I've heard from the chapter is they're amazed when I walked into the building and smelled, it was 2 days after the water had gone down, and I smelled the smell, and I saw the mess, and I saw things beginning to get torn apart, and we couldn't do a worship here. We had to go for part of the interview to David Gardell's space. Thank you so much for making that happen. And when I got on the plane leaving, I looked at Mark and I thought, oh dear God, they're going to think I'm bringing the 10 plagues. I'm going to be like, this is a sign for them, but Mark, I love that building. It would be my baby building. You're my youngest congregation, my youngest building. I have every building I have served has had this wonderful dynamic combination of 19th century, 1950s, and late 20th century, all smushed together in a lovely spaghetti that looks kind of like an Italian dinner, but doesn't always smell as good as an Italian dinner does. But I am courageous, and I love our old girl, as I've started to refer to her, and she needs some love back from us. I've done this in every parish that I've been in, and they need constant work and love, and allows us to leap out of here with the gospel. And when we get too tangled up in a building that's failing, the gospel can get a little tangled as well, but that's what you get to talk about. So the numbers, chapter already has this number, and I've wanted chapter to always guide our steps forward. So that's why we're rolling it out together. The number for a full renovation as well, which would address the doors, accessibility, making some extra space for larger receptions, as well as taking care of all of the inside stuff. The number that our owner representative has negotiated with AO and with Boyd Jones, as far down as they could get it, is $5.5 million, which was beyond our reach in 2016 and in 2018. And despite the great optimists, I am more of a realist, and I think 5.5 might be a little beyond our reach right now. So the other number is that in cash, right now today in an account, is $1,850,000 and some change. We have gone to 2 of the family foundations that have a long-standing relationship with the cathedral, who are very supportive of us as an institution, who love our building and want to see it taken care of. And we can reliably expect a few 200,000 more from them. So that gets us all the way to the 2 million. And we have 3 other prospects, 2 family foundations, and then 1 private donor that hasn't called me back, but wasn't asked in the first round and loves this building and this community very well. So working with Brent and the pledges that haven't finished coming in, we believe that we can get up to 2.1 million, and that's a solid, rational number to expect. That does not take into account any new pledges of some of the congregation who aren't familiar with this project, who've come in more recently, but 2.1 feels realistic and courageous, but it's solid because we have almost all of that, and we do have a commitment from another family foundation, and one of the family foundations that's already part of the project. So those are the numbers: 5.5 for the entire thing, 2.1 in cash very quickly. Here's the other reality. I wanted to hand you an FAQ sheet. That was the plan. But this week, our copier is not cooperating well. This is going someplace. The copier guy came out and said, I don't know, I can run copies on it, what's wrong? So we figured out what was wrong is that the day the copier fix-it guy came, it was dry outside and there was no humidity outside. Why is it so humid in our offices? And it is, in fact, the humidity in our offices that is impacting the copier because it hurts the paper. I know, Jeff is like, I know, the dean's going off on the HVAC system again. But what has happened, and this is just an example of how things tumble, the HVAC system is from 1950s, I'm looking at Vern, 6? Yeah, 1956 is when the HVAC system was installed. And while if you were alive or born in 1956, that does not make a human body necessarily old. But it does make equipment quite old. And the piece of equipment that removes humidity from the air, which would allow the copier to work and be better for our computer system, is not functioning and cannot quickly be repaired. And I can't remember, is it that they don't, do you remember why it's not the condenser. So Stacy's been in contact with Mark, and it's the condensation pump is not functioning and cannot be quickly replaced because it doesn't exist anymore. So the HVAC system needs to be overhauled and brought up to code. As Norm mentioned, the drainage system needs to be addressed fully. The city requirements are to the solution for the, and I'm not going to go into deep details, but we do have to go out 5 feet outside the foundation to deal with the drainage. To keep what's happening is that we're able to block raw sewage from coming in, but we can't stop the rainwater from coming down into the basement. So again, lots of details in spaghetti. There was the big flood, which is not the only flood that's happened within living memory. Since I have been here, which is less than 2 years, we have had 3 more, what Stacy and Maurice describe as backups. What that means is that we have a flood that doesn't go outside the kitchen. So it's a mini flood as opposed to a really big dramatic flood.
In a drought year.
In a drought year. So we know that the drainage is an issue that is impacting furnishings and meals and so forth. We know that HVAC is a great issue, an expensive issue that has to be brought up to code and addressed with equipment that can be serviced and replaced reliably. And we know that both of these situations are urgent. on top of that piece, we do have certain realities of it just being an old building. There's asbestos in the ceiling. There's some electrical challenges, not fire challenges, just they can't handle certain types of electricity. Our teacher who works on the 3rd floor has some dramatic stories, which we outlets that spark and things that we might want to blame on a poltergeist, but actually know are in the walls and in the system someplace. So we really need, our old girl needs some real love. And just as some of us here today understand that if we get a new knee, or we get a different medication, or we start working out a little bit better, we can revive ourselves and have a healthier, more dynamic life. And that's what we need to do with our old girl. I love this building. I love this congregation. We have almost $2 million in cash, which is phenomenal. And we need to take it a step at a time, walk with the leaders of Omaha who are committed to us and are giving us advice about going forward and what the reality of the world is today. I'm going to give Tara the mic. I'm going to ask you real quickly.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, so Ben and I, a year ago, bought a home that was built in the 1880s. Yay, love it. We also just finished renovating our kitchen. Took way longer than we thought. We had a lot of things that we had to do, including electrical, that we did not expect. So I understand, I know that all of you understand that when things happen, it's a bummer, but you have to take care of the foundational things in your home, and it's the same as this building. I also feel a very much a responsibility to be a steward of a home that was built before my great-grandparents were born, and hopefully will exist beyond my lifetime, my children's lifetime. And I very much feel that here, this space. So when I think about our opportunities, I think about being able to be a good steward of the space for future generations. And I also think about the opportunities that we have for the future. When Ben and I started coming here, I looked online, and I think the tagline is like historical space, fresh ideas, something like that. Yeah. And I just loved that because I love old spaces. I love historical spaces, but I also am future-oriented and want a space and a place and a community that's thinking about what the community needs and imagining what we could do together here. And when we were reading through the first kind of the imagining in 2016, I read through it and I said, yes, 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 that is still true. I think we may need to adapt. We want to bring in new voices because since 2016, we've had a global pandemic, but we've also had new members come on board. And so we want to bring those voices in. But I do think, and I'm really excited about what those opportunities are. And I think the dream is still the dream. As I was reading it, it felt exciting. And so I think the difference here, in my mind, is that we have to do step one, which is the foundation. We have to have a strong foundation. And then continuing to have conversations about what that dream, how we implement that dream, how we move forward that dream that it has been stewing, right? Has been gestating for 7 years. And so I definitely want us to think about what needs to be done right now, but also do not take our eye off that dream that we've had, because it's still there for future generations.
because we are on YouTube right now, and because it's going to be preserved and be able to be watched later, I'm actually, Tara, going to ask you to take that and clip it into the microphone stand right there. Yeah, turn it on. And if you have a question, if you could come up to the microphone and ask that question. And I will say one other framing piece. This is not my first time in a building like this. This is not my first time. The dream is about identity and activity and gospel work. And you have, throughout all of this, you have had an identity and reputation for beautiful worship, historic identity, but you've also had an identity of making a systemic difference in Omaha. That's one of the things that attracted me so deeply. Way back in 2016, we were planning on space for Brother James and the Benedictine Way. We were planning space on Magdalene, Omaha. We were planning space for, you were planning space for DEO. Brother James now has a monastery that's 2 buildings in a whole different part of the city, which is great. Go visit, go pray. Magdalene, Omaha, well, you heard all the amazing things that she's doing today. Everything had to be moved out of here to make more sense for them. And then DEO has transitioned away from having an in-house amazing program to addressing a need that no one else was doing. No one else in the city was packaging up as many meals as we package up and take it out. Maurice, don't you run away. We know you're responsible for this. Canon Thompson continues to be one of the folks involved in DEO. And again, DEO is no longer needs that big inside feeding ministry, because it's been a ministry that's now addressing a uniquely addressing a need in taking our meals out to people who can't come inside or won't come inside. So all the programs that we thought we needed specific space for continued to be strong and continue to move forward, but they have outgrown us, even if we had finished the building. So programming continues to happen. The building continues to be here for us, but declaring the gospel and getting out there and displaying our identity has not shifted. Now I will I will tell you, I don't have a lot of answers beyond what I've told you, but I will now I and the rest of the committee will take questions. If anyone has a question, come on up to the microphone. Joe, can you come up to the microphone? But I want to make sure everybody on YouTube, hears you.
My question is, if we've got 2.1 million, so we've talked about the imperative piece is a front and an elevator, and have you taken the? Let me finish, because as I understood it, and the sewage problem to fix the flooding, and the other building concerns, not the kitchen, not any new furniture. Not even the electricity. I mean, just to get, if we spent that 2.1 million, could we get the front, the elevator, the sewage, and because if the house falls down around us, it doesn't matter what the furniture looks like.
Right.
So, I mean, what can you do with that? Because I read between the lines that you're saying we've got this cash, and if we can't get any more, what can we do with that without incurring a great deal of debt?
That's what can we do with the 2.1?
Yes.
So that's one of the questions I don't have a specific answer for, but I can tell you that we have to go all the way back to having a healthy building, which is drainage, absolutely. HVAC is really necessary. Electrical is tied up in a lot of that, so that has to happen.
Yes, it is.
And asbestos removal. And so that stuff has to be done.
Do we have to remove the asbestos because we're not going to disturb it?
Well, and more to the point, just to do...
we're not going to sell it. You know, we have asbestos in our house. When you get ready to sell it, you got to do something with it. If you're not going to disturb it.
Well, that's the key. We are going to be disturbing it in order to fix the HVAC and the electrical, which is in the ceiling.
Get that.
Yeah. So in order to do the work that's absolutely necessary for a healthy building, we're going to have to touch the ceilings, which means asbestos. So I will tell you, we are working with the, I wanted the parish chapter got to know first when I had my clarifying conversations with some family foundations of what they're able to give us. The chapter got to know first. You now get to know. I have not talked to AO yet because I thought it was important that the parish gets that information. What reliably I think we can expect is to be able to get a healthy building. So the reality is, in this step, we would not be able to get the front or the accessibility addressed.
Okay.
It would just be about a healthy build. Not just, it would be the healthy building.
Then we essentially, are you thinking we would take on each of those other projects individually after the building's healthy?
I'll tell you, that is for you to decide.
Yeah, okay.
And I will walk with you through every bit of that.
Okay.
But I want to make sure
That would be
that
my
the
vote,
congregation,
that would be
yeah.
helpful.
But the healthy building has become urgent. Any other questions? What was that? You want to make a pledge? Sure, I'd love that. Mark and I have not yet made a pledge, and we're very excited about this project. And so we have pledge cards up here. I didn't know how many new people might be coming on board, but there's going to be at least one pledge card coming out of this meeting. Mark was supposed to be here because he is the more generous of the two. It's just true, honey. But I know the number that he'd like to write down, and that is the number that's going to get written down. We know that pledges went into a lot of other ideas and dreams, and the chapter is available to you, and Brent is available to you if you have any questions about your pledges or where you might want to go forward. Are there? Yes.
So the 2.1 million that we have in cash, that's not including pledges that were made in 2016 that have not been paid.
So the one.
So Teresa and I made a pledge in 2016. We made a payment, but when the project stopped, we said we're not going to pay anymore right now. So are you counting those pledges that were made that are yet still outstanding for Cathedral Commons?
So what we have in cash, we are not. What we have in cash, and this is why I wish I had an FAQ sheet. What we have in cash is $1,850,000. We have a commitment of a family foundation to contribute another $200,000. So that gets us to $2,050,000. After that, where we get to the point one, all the way to the point one, are unrealized pledges, so pledges that haven't yet been fulfilled. And there's another family foundation that we reliably get annual funds from that has also given money to the project. And it is a reasonable expectation that they will give a little bit more also because of the relationship between these fundraisers. But $2,050,000 is a reliable number for what we have in cash, and then a commitment from a family foundation. But the pledges that have not yet been fulfilled is how we get over that $2 million. Vern said that people, yeah, the improvements that you have already seen done, the complete redoing of the courtyard, as well as getting the windows that were about to fall out and decapitate somebody, both of those got done with money that did not exist in that. And the 1.8 million in cash we have is actual cash, does not include what's already been spent on the initial plans. Okay.
What has to be done to just say, okay, the things to make the old girl healthy, can start now and use our money and just get that done? Is there a hold?
No, there is not. So, it is urgent. I believe this year we can accomplish getting a healthy building. We can start accomplishing getting a healthy building with the money that we have and can predictably get. Because I wanted the parish to know first, I have not yet, Norm and I haven't yet asked our builders to revamp, because they have to pull the other stuff, the plan they have to pull back into the more essential stuff. But I believe that with what has already been collected and what we can reliably get, that we'll get the old girl healthy.
Okay.
And we would do that this year.
Because we need to go in order to get a woohoo.
Agreed. Okay. What time is it? 12:50. So I didn't think this would go more than an hour, which means we can stop now. This was an update, a snapshot update. As we get, when we talk to AO and Boyd Jones and we get a firmer number and a clearer number, we'll have another update. And the reason we did it here, where it's uncomfortable, is because I wanted folks at home to be able to hear what's going on as well.
And if things come to your mind when you walk out of here that you want to talk about, think about, ask about, please contact me, contact the dean, contact Vern. I don't know how much you know.
So Vern, Norm didn't have the microphone, but what Norm was saying, for those who couldn't hear, is that if you have questions, I know you can't ask questions out there on YouTube. If you have questions, if you have more information that you want us to know, Norm and Vern and I are the ones who meet directly with AO and Boyd Jones on a regular basis, and the chapter always gets the information we have first. The advisory committee has not yet been able to meet because we haven't had plans